Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Wumi Bello Show. We've got a little bit of a different type of episode for you today. So, if you've been online at all, you would have seen that there has been a lot of relationship breakup, relationship conversation that's kind of been taking place. Pretty much the whole of January has kind of been back to back. And I found in analyzing or looking at, a lot of the stories that we've been seeing play out, that there's kind of like there's a rhythm, there's a synergy in all the stories. There's love involved, there's identity, there's age, there's responsibility, there's accountability. These are all kind of the topic points that I'm sensing and seeing from all of these stories. And so what I want to do is slow it all the way down and really try to get an understanding of what's going on beneath the surface. Let's get into it. So before we even get into any of the relationships that we want to, talk about, one thing I want to say is that whenever things play out online, this is actually how my brain thinks. Whenever things play out online, whether it's someone's relationship, mum and dad, friendship, like whatever stories you kind of see, play out, I always look at them from the standpoint of like, what from this story can I learn from? Like, what from this story can I don't know, mirror in my own life? Or what from this story can I learn? Like, what from this story can I say absolutely the heck no, is not coming with me, stay away from me? Like, for me, there's always something that we can take away from the story. And I say this because there's always so much judgment whenever, people's relationships and stuff take place online. There's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of criticizing, there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of stuff going on that I would love, or what I'm trying to do with this episode especially, is for us to kind of look at this and look at ourselves and be like, well, tick right there, I know I will never do that. Or tick right there, I know that maybe I need to like rewire my brain a little bit because of this, I don't know, new POV that I've just found based off of this episode, this story, this way of looking at things. I just need us to ask the question of, what can I take from these stories that are playing out online? That is a question that I want us, anyone who's a part of this show, anyone who watches this, like, that's the standpoint that we operate from. What can I take or can I not take from this? Okay, so while we're on the topic of age and people changing and, watching relationships and things play out online, I want to talk about Brooklyn Beckham, or Brooklyn Peltz Beckham, and Nicola Peltz Beckham. Now, if you've been online at all, you would have seen that, there was a series of posts that he made on his Instagram stories where he was essentially kind of calling out his parents, his whole family, and saying that he does not want to reconcile. He is done. It was heavy. And I said, whoa. And I want to talk about that, but I want to break down or slow down the story very much, similar to the last topic. This isn't necessarily about exactly what was written, but more so what we can receive from it and what kind of like my analysis has been around the topic. So when I first saw the post, I, like majority of people, immediately you're like, oh my God, like what? I remember I was on the phone to my girl Bex and we were kind of talking about it. We were like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for him. Like, oh, he's in this family. And immediately, like, that was my response. I was kind of like putting him in this victim, space where I was like, oh my gosh, like, bless him. Like, oh, I wonder what it's like being, growing up in that environment, from just a first read, initial response. Now, then I read it again, or maybe a few days later, I kind of read it again, and I start to ask more questions as I kind of read between some of the lines, and I'm like, wait a second, how old are we all here, please? That's the first question I had. I was like, wait. How old is everybody in this story? Because it matters. Like, to me, it matters, and I'm going to break down exactly why it matters. So let's go through some of the facts that we do know. He was 21 years old when he proposed to Nicola, and she was 25. That is a significant age difference, and I want us to everybody just like hold on to that, because for me, I am like, any 21 years old man who, especially one that we know that because of the, the family that he comes from, naturally there would have been a lot of like protection around him. There would have been a lot of, he would have just been covered a lot. So I can imagine that, firstly, men naturally grow or mature a lot later than women, right? So you've got this 21-year-old young man who is still growing in his like understanding of like who he is, da da da. But then it's also not an average 21-year-old man. It's also a 21-year-old man that has been deeply, covered and protected and, lived a certain type of lifestyle, luxury. And so because of that, naturally, he's just, the best way to describe it is that he's been covered for the vast majority of his life, that you can imagine that at 21, that must mean that he's not who he would be at, say 30 years old, when he's a lot more of like, or where he would be a way more fully formed man, right? So I'm like, a 21-year-old man like proposing, or 21-year-old young boy like proposing to, a 25-year-old. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, and this isn't to say that, people can't fall in love and love one another and be so sure that this is my person, blah, 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 and all the bits. But marriage is such a delicate, it's such a rich, it's such a, I watched this psychologist, actually, this psychologist, like a marriage psychologist, and he was breaking down what he says marriage is, or the kind of question you should be asking yourself when you're about to get married. And he was saying that one of the biggest things that you need to understand is that when it comes to marriage, you're not looking for a partner that you just like and, whatever. No, what you actually need to do is firstly understand that life is hard, point blank period. Like, let's just start with the understanding that life is hard. And so the question that you then ask after acknowledging and accepting that life is hard is, who can I do this life with that will make the process of like knowing that life is hard easier to navigate through? Like, who can I navigate through the journey of life being hard with? Who has the right tools, the right mentality, the right the right mindset that fits into, my world, my life, my perception of life, my way of navigating things? Like, who slots and fits into my life? And I don't think at 21 years old, you can answer that question very clearly, especially as a man, like to be like, I know the hardships of, life and like the reality of myself and da da da. And so I know that this person is the perfect fit. I think it's unrealistic for us to say that, a 21-year-old man is very clear on that idea. Even as a 26-year-old man, even as a 26-year-old woman, you're still figuring that out. Like I think that like, that's a very, very heavy loaded question. And I think it's the type of question that we should be asking, when we're thinking about who do we want to marry and who's the right person for me and all of this stuff, right? So let's just hold that thought there. And so let's also now look at the fact that, Nicola, she's 25 when he proposes. And I feel like a 21 and a 25-year-old woman feels like you guys are probably in different stages in life, but you can still have similarities in terms of your conversation, but in terms of mindset and things that she probably would have experienced. Yes, she was also shielded, to some respect too, because she comes from this super, super wealthy family. So, there would have been a lot of like covering and whatever else around her too, right? But I still think the age gap would have given her a bit more room for her to like see the realities of like life, well, their kind of life, because they don't live the same life as everybody else. But let's be honest with ourselves. But anyway, we know that the reality of like, she would have experienced a little bit more than him. So her understanding, perception might look slightly different. And I think that's something that she probably is aware of and he probably is aware of it, but he probably at that age probably found it like enduring is the word. Endearing is the word I'm looking for. Endearing. And not to say that, I know how their love story is, played out. I'm just looking at this more so from an age standpoint, and we're going to get to why I'm looking at it from that. A lot of the time, we get this feeling, especially I'm thinking about even myself, like at 21, I was in a relationship, and boy, oh boy, I probably would have been very loud and wrong in telling all my friends, which I know I did, that this is my person, I am marrying this person, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm 29 years old and I know how vastly different of a person I am than, who I was at 21. That it wouldn't have made sense for me to have married the person I was with at 21. Lovely man, but it wouldn't have made sense because our lives don't fit. Going back to the question that I said that psychologist asked, our lives wouldn't fit for us to like get through life together. Like it wouldn't click very well. And so I think a lot of the time, we tend to lean into the emotion, especially at 21, you lean into the emotion that you get from this like new love, exciting love, and you have the idea that, you're ready for something. And because of the buzz and the emotion and the boost and the joy that, love can give you, you can find yourself rushing into something that your maturity might not be ready to uphold yet, right? And so let's just like hold on to that idea. Let's hold on to their age. Let's hold on to what kind of world he's coming from, what kind of world she's coming from, as we go through some of the things that stood out to me in the story post that he made. One of the first things that stood out to me in the statement that he put out is when he was talking about money and his parents wanted him to sign some sort of contract. So I just want to read exactly what he said in that statement. He said, "Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children." Now, let's stop it there. Basically, the sentiment was that there's something that they wanted him to sign, some sort of a document. And so, from my understanding, I'm kind of getting the sentiment that, we know he's a household name, he's a Beckham. And so, because of that, naturally, there's deals, there's opportunities, there's jobs, things wrapped around his name that he would be, called to do. And there needs to be someone who is kind of who's legally controlling that, or has access to that, or is helping him, supporting him in making that decision, right? And I think that for the kind of person that he is, absolutely, that makes sense. Okay, before we analyze this any further, I want us to be really clear in understanding why this type of deal or this type of contract might need to be signed before the marriage. Immediately, when you get married, dynamic kind of changes, financial structures like changes. You're no longer like, you're just my own person, I can do this, and that's not to say that him and Nicola are going to be doing all the deals that he does together, but it does affect her. Like, she kind of has a little bit more of a say in his life and his doings, and so having that kind of thing like closed off and sealed and cemented, and it says that legally who is involved, who isn't, who is this, who is that, who is what, in it legally for him, it kind of protects, from his parents' perspective, it would protect him, it would protect the overall business. And so when I read that part, I was like, I kind of immediately was like, I understand from both sides of the argument why on the parents' side, they would feel like, he needs to sign this document. And then I would also kind of see it from like the soon-to-be wife's side, why she might in the background. And I'm not saying this is what happened, but I'm just kind of, from my standpoint, this is how I kind of see it playing out. I can understand from her side why she'll be like, no. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So on the parent side, we can now fast forward now. He's now a 23-year-old, right? About to get married. You're a 23-year-old man about to get married. Still at 23, someone who's grown up in, significant level of like privilege. You've been, protected all your life. Your parents have probably done these deals with you and they've taken you into these rooms and You've not really had to like properly like stand on your own feet in a way that a lot of us have been, thrusted into standing on our own feet in this life. He's had that level of protection that I can still imagine at, 23, his parents would still be wanting to be a part of his business decision, wanting to support him, wanting to guide him, wanting to protect him, make sure that he's making the right decisions. Obviously, they've been in the industry for a lot longer, so I can imagine why that protection and why that them needing him and wanting him to sign this contract would be there. I can get it from their perspective. Okay, so looking at it from her perspective, you can kind of understand why she might be like, "Hey, bro, sorry, sir, we're about to get married and." They want you to sign away the fact that you can make your own deal, or you can run your own organization, you can run your own life. Because on her end, I can imagine that, it can kind of be a moment where you're like, do you not want this to be a moment where you get to run your own life and go independent and be independent? You can imagine that it's one of those conversations where it's like, I was going to call him Beckham, Brooklyn. Bro, you can be independent now. You can do your own thing. You can like live, like make your own rules. Like, how long do you want your parents to do things for you? Like, be your own man. Don't sign it. This affects me in the same way that it affects you. We have to think about our family. We have to think about our future prospects. All of those kind of things. I can kind of imagine those conversations happening. I can imagine it being around, if you sign now, then we'll always have like these people or someone else being a part of our business deal. And we don't want that. Let's create our own world. Let's do our own thing. Let's, these are, for me, sound like very natural conversation that would happen in these type of dynamics. Now, that's not to say that she's wrong. And that's also not to say that the parents are wrong. I think what I'm finding in the Brooklyn Beckham, Nicola Peltz, family, Beckham, everybody story is that no one is actually wrong. Like, until there's more facts on the table where they're saying that somebody actually threw water in someone's face, and yeah, cool, wrong. But there's no actual like concrete like facts that says like someone is wrong or this person is wrong or this. Things might not be right, but what I'm kind of noticing is that it's like different ways of looking at things, and everybody kind of being at different points in life, and everybody kind of wanting to protect like different parts of Brooklyn, and I think it kind of puts him in this position where he's having to figure out his identity, figure out who he is, figure out what he's about, figure out how to make his own decision, figure out how to be like independent, how to do his own thing outside of his family, outside of his parents, publicly. And I think that that's kind of what's going on. And I can imagine that publicly, and also when you're marrying someone who's also like mega rich, mega wealthy, in the same way that you are, it just sounds like, how in life, like we're all growing, we're all evolving. Imagine doing that publicly, but then you also are doing it publicly, but then you're also doing it with a wife or family that comes from mega amount of money, mega amount of access. I don't know. I just think it puts him in this really weird, position where he's trying to like break out of the box of figuring out who he is. Just to bring that point home, I think it's just a matter of like timing isn't right, because clearly like different sides of it feels like different people are trying to protect different things. The parents are trying to almost protect him, protect their legacy, protect like who he becomes and whatever else. And it seems like the wife naturally would want to protect like his independence and how he morphs into a man, which is why like I think the age thing and the getting married this young, it makes it a lot harder to figure out that identity very clearly, because once you become, or someone becomes your wife, like the say and the hold and the weight they have on your life and your decision, on your rationale, is stronger, like as in it's mad aggressive, as in it's a lot bigger, like it's a lot weightier than it would be if someone is still your girlfriend, or even still, I think maybe even fiance. I think once you cross over to the land of fiance, marriage, it's a different level of like weight and hold that they have over your life, over the things you do, over the things that you don't do. Whereas you can imagine if he's trying to figure out his identity, his independence, his autonomy, all of this stuff as a man who's just in a relationship with someone that he loves, and they're just growing together, that feels like he's able to like listen to multiple people and come to his own decision. Whereas especially when men are in love, oh my gosh, when women are in love too, when everybody is in love, eyes closed, whatever my wife says, like, is what's being done. You know what I mean? I think it's just a lot easier for him to be wavered in a certain direction. Obviously, none of us know the facts of the matter, but I this is what I'm kind of discerning and kind of seeing. I just think that it's a matter of like two people trying to protect two sides of him. And so another thing that I was kind of like sitting with is that, there was stuff that he was talking about that occurred at his wedding, like his mum dancing, or his mum, I think he said that his mum called him evil for not sitting her on the same table as them, and various things like that, right? And I think the reality is that when you're getting married, emotions are heightened. Like if you've been around people who are getting ready for their wedding, who are planning their wedding, it is intense. Everybody can get it anytime, anywhere, any day. The mum, the dad, like everybody's emotion is very high, very, very extreme. And that's not to say that, it's the nicest thing in the world for a mum to be like, son, you are evil, from a place of like pain and feeling, and her being clearly hurt by the way that he's, navigating like the seating plans or whatever else. I'm not saying that's like the nicest thing to hear. It's not. But is it the worst thing that, can happen between like a mother-son dynamic? I don't think so. I just feel like when you look at the nature of like what's going on, weddings are deep, weddings are intense. Parents, everybody is in their feelings. Things are said, emotions are high. I don't mean this, I do mean this. Like, I can imagine that was a lot of the energy that, was going on. And I think also on his end, again, going back to this thing of like, this man is like in the middle of two tensions here, wanting to, figure out his independence, but then also like, trying to grow apart from, being so closely like tied to his mom, dad, and them kind of doing everything for him. Well, we don't know if that's the case, but him just fighting between like two very different tensions, figuring out his independence, what that looks like, figuring out his new life with his wife, what that looks like. I just think emotions just feels like it's very high. And as we're even talking about emotions as well, like one thing I really picked up on was in his message was actually the language. It felt very emotional and like absolute, like full stop is the best way I can describe it. Everything felt very full stop and felt unnecessarily full stop, right? Let me explain that, because you're probably thinking, what do you mean, girl? Basically, it's you read all the things that's kind of occurred, right? You know, mum called me evil. She danced when it wasn't her time to dance. You know, whatever else, all the things that he was kind of explaining, none of it was felt deeply heavy, mad to the point where you say to your family, I will never reconcile. Like, I am done. Like, nothing, like, it just didn't feel like it carried that level of weight. It for me, it carries the weight of, I don't want to talk to my family. Like, I don't want to talk to my family this week. We probably all need therapy and we need to talk. And I need to let you know how I feel. Mum and dad, you need to let me grow and become a man and make my own decisions and live my own life. And we can all conclude on that point. But with the words that he's using, that absolute, oh, I never want to reconcile. I don't know. To me, it feels unnecessary for the things that he's explained in these messages. Like, nothing feels like it holds enough gravity for it to be this absolute, like, we are done. Oh, my siblings, everybody gone's out. So, like, closing all the doors on everybody. I'm just like, sir, like, I don't think it's that deep. And what to me that reflects is just his age. Like, he's a 26-year-old man figuring it out. Of course he's going to be absolute. Of course he's going to be in his feelings. I think this kind of wording to me, like, if anything, it just signals exactly like what we've been saying in this conversation, that he's young, like he's figuring it out, and he's figuring it out in the public, you know, view, like everybody's watching as he's figuring it out. For me, I'm like, if there was like more concrete things, and also because in the message, you know, initially what stood out to me and what made me in my feels when I was like, oh my God, poor baby, and trying to make him like this helpless victim, is initially when he was talking about the fact that his parents, what did he say about them? His parents control the media, and like, you know, they just want them to perform and, you know, create this perfect family, and that when he said that part of the message, I was like, oh, I can imagine, like, don't know the Beckhams, but like, oh, poor you. But then you listen to some of their interviews and, you know, conversations and before all of this stuff started to happen, you hear how he spoke about his parents, how, even forget him, even Nicola spoke about David Beckham and Victoria Beckham. Like, it was with so much love. It was with so much joy. And I even remember there was a video I watched literally that came out a year ago. Let's actually play that video real quick.
Super Bowl's next weekend. Victoria and David's commercial.
The best thing I've ever seen.
Best thing you've ever seen. Are they always that funny?
Yeah. They're hysterical. She's hysterical. They're both hysterical. But she is so funny, and that commercial like killed me. I was like, they deserve an Oscar for that commercial.
What is that relationship like, just walking around the house with them? Like, are they just the best?
They're really the best people. And I'm so excited Victoria's here tonight, and it means the world to me. She made my outfit. She customized this beautiful look, and I'm just like so happy to have her here tonight.
Okay, so that was an interview that she did a year ago on a red carpet. I think it was a movie premiere, that it was maybe her movie premiere, and you listen to that and you watch that video and you watch the, you know, the essence of that video. For me, I don't feel any I don't look at that and think, oh, this girl is lying and she's, you know, creating a perception. It just feels like she's just talking and she's just happy, and she's just like, I love my mother-in-law, like she's just the best and I feel so happy, and, you know, just gushing over Victoria Beckham. And this is a video that was a year ago. In my mind, I'm like, how do you go from sharing that love and like that gush and that joy for, you know, someone or a family, and then all of a sudden it leads to, you know, him wanting to not reconcile with the entire family. The point I'm getting at is that even in his interviews prior to this situation playing out, he spoke joyfully about his parents, right? And again, you don't watch those videos and you get this perception that this is a man who's lying, trying to cover up for his evil, malicious family who are doing absolutely menace things to him in the background. You get innocence, like you get, oh, okay, nice, cute family, so cute. You know, the same thing that you get from this video from her. And in my mind, I'm like, how did we all of a sudden like get all the way here to the point where you're saying, oh, my family have always made me perform and I've always da-da-da-da-da. It's not, for me, it's not correlating. Not to say that I'm sure, you know, his family are in the public eye. Of course, I'm going to make him do a little performance here and there and say, hey, walk down that street and come to the event and come to the red carpet, you know, show, event, movie, thing, whatever. The majority of the media industry is a massive performance, not in terms of how you treat each other and how you love one another, like in your day-to-day life, but also the places that you have to go. You have to go to the events and support your mum. So there is like an element of like, you know, performance there in a way, but I don't get the perception that his family have been like this evil, they sit you down in this dungeon and they're like, you must do this today, you must do that today. I don't get that sentiment. I just think this is just a matter of like a man evolving into a grown man, and he's trying to find his feet and he's trying to find himself, and he's just having to do that whilst being married. Because do you know what it means? Hello, hi. Like, do you know what it means to be firstly growing, evolving into a man? That one is its own, it brings its own problems, right? That's its own fights in life. And then you're also a married man trying to figure it out in the public eye. It's like those two are two very big tension that he's trying to do, like, you know what I mean, like simultaneously. Like it is, I can imagine that. I can give him the grace in saying that I feel like it would be intense for him. I feel like it is a little bit complicated, because the thing is also, I know that, in the beginning we were talking about, oh, he grew up protected. He didn't come into this life asking for that. That's the grace that's on his life, That shouldn't take away the fact that his emotions are valid, and the fact that his growth and his own journey and what that journey takes and what that journey is requiring of him is valid, Just around this topic of the last thing I wanted to say or discuss was, I know that they did their marriage renewal, vow renewal, a year ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 months ago now, and they've been married for 3 years. I'm like, oh, okay, it's usually you see people do marriage renewals at, I don't know, 10-year mark of their journey to kind of mark like the growth, the journey, whatever. I think their reason from what they said is that there was a lot of things that occurred on their wedding day that took away from their grand moment. And I just feel like if you are, saying that you're coming from this family that's filled with like performance and making you do certain things, or just this family that's like filled with like so much performance, and you want no part of it, and you want to do things your own way, your own this and that. I would imagine that your marriage renewal would be something that is away from the public eye completely. It will be something that is like just so for you guys, so sacred to you guys, that it wouldn't be publicized anywhere, because you guys needed that intimacy and you needed a little bit of a different vibe, a little bit of a different something. That's the only part of the story that I've been looking at. I'm like, again, it all circles back to the same thing of growing, of like immaturity, of evolving, of someone who is literally right before our eyes, like morphing into his identity, morphing into a man. So yeah, I just want to wish them luck, really. I think he's definitely not a helpless victim in the way that I tried to play him in the beginning. And I don't think that his parents, personally, I don't see them as villains. I just think that, this is a man who is right before our eyes, growing and trying to figure out who he is, whilst being married to a woman who is older than him, has more experience than him. And I don't know, I can imagine the complexities of what that looks and what that looks like for him on a day-to-day. I hope that he's able to reconcile with his family. I think he's definitely going to need to, with the way the journey of life works. We all need people. So yeah, I wish him the best. Okay, so the last story that I want us to talk about is Kristy and Desmond's heartbreaking news about their divorce. I think for a lot of people that was a lot. It felt very unexpected. Let me even give you some context in case you're also listening. You're like, who are these people you're mentioning? So Chrissy and Desmond are content creators with a massive, massive cult following online. They've kind of been around for, I want to say maybe about 5 years now. It kind of came into the public eye that she had filed for a divorce, and she cited that he had cheated. And I think there was also something about personality being different and whatever else. In terms of the content and stuff that they created, so her content would more so be like, making, like, just doing pranks, funny, and jumping around and being silly. It was very fun, very silly, very chaotic, very loud. I think she called herself like maybe Chaos Boss or Chaos Queen or Chaotic, something. And then on his personal content, it was more like him cooking for her, cooking for the family, just cooking lifestyle bits and bobs. And a lot of people love them. A lot of people love them together. A lot of people love them as, individuals. Now, initially seeing, the way things kind of came out online, for a lot of people, myself included, I was like, hey, divorce, like what, because in a lot of the videos that you watch, like you get the perception that he's smitten. And I know other people have, online done their own personal discourses where they were showing like other videos and showing like their past videos and saying that he didn't really seem that smitten, or he didn't really seem that much into her. Anyway, that's not really what we're discussing here. We don't know the ins and outs of anyone's relationship, but what we do like to look at here, what I do like to sit with is, I'm like, what's the root of, of this relationship? Like, what is the beginning grounds, as we were talking about, as I was looking at the Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz Beckham story, I was kind of just see myself comparing the two very different situations here, but just going back to this thing of age, because Desmond and Kristy, they got married at 19 and 20. I believe she was 19, he was 20. Hey, we young. Hello. Like, these are some incredibly delicate ages. And I don't want people to get me wrong in saying that, or have the belief that I'm saying that, young marriage is wrong or young marriage can never work. I just don't think, from what we know about our development and about our development and how we grow, I don't think it's always the wisest decision. I don't think that at 19, 20, that we know ourselves enough to know what is the best option for us, who is the best option for us. Of course, there are people who've met in their teens and it's this tween love, I'm my tween or my teenager. And, they've been together and they're now 93 and they're still together. Amazing. But especially in this generation where so much of like the way we live our lives, so much of the way we form ourselves, so much of it is lived out publicly. Whether you're a creator or not a creator, you are continuously, taking information online and this and this and this and this. There's so much information and things that you're being fed that I know that naturally those type of things just affect like our formation and who we become and how we become them. Anyway, the point being that they were 19, or she was 19, he was 20. Immediately, I'm like, wow, these are, two very young people who've had to essentially grow up together, and not only grow up as individuals, similar to, Brooklyn, grow up as individuals, but also grow up within a marriage. Those are two very like, whoa. And I always have to bring back to myself here because I'm like, me at 21, if I got married at 21, who I am now at 29 is so vastly different to who I was at 21 that, like, personally, please don't marry 21-year-old woman. She would have drove you insane. I know myself. No. Was she fun? Was she lovely? Yes. But was she absolutely confused? 1,000,000%. Was she figuring it out and, changing in one season and another season? And like, there was just so much, there was so much tension in that change. And, not to say that we're still not evolving now. We absolutely are. But I just know how deep it was between the stages of 21 to, this age now. It's very different. Okay, so let's actually go through the exact facts that, we know. So the initial thing that was made public was the fact that she was divorcing him and she cited cheating, like I said before. But then, but that wasn't necessarily or there was no actual, we didn't know the full thing yet until he came out with a statement, I think shortly after, and he basically acknowledged what he did. And he said that, he made a mistake, but then he also decided to, just add in there that he did have a conversation with Kristy towards the end of 2025. Let me actually read out the statement. He said, "Kristy and I faced challenges and made sincere efforts to work through them. Towards the end of 2025, I wanted to separate. I had a conversation with Kristy regarding this. During this period, I made choices that I am not proud of. I took responsibility for those actions and shared this with her directly and personally, and ultimately we decided to divorce." Now, I think it's a beautiful thing for him to have had that conversation about, him, not a beautiful thing, wow, that sounds probably crazy, but beautiful in the sense that I know that it would have taken a lot for him to get to that point, or for them to get to that point of realizing that perhaps this isn't meant to be. But what's not beautiful, or what we're not gonna dilute here, is, the fact that he cheated, like whether or not he had that conversation, just the fact that you guys are still within the marriage and you're still trying to figure things out, it doesn't make it right. It will never be right. But I appreciate the fact, I mean, who am I that I'm appreciating anything? I'm sure she appreciated the fact that he would have brought this to her and, she didn't have to find out elsewhere. At least from what he said in his story, that's kind of what we're, gathering. Now, that's not really the focus of, the conversation. What I actually want to talk about is more so like how the internet reacted to the situation. where, you know, a lot of people were kind of picking sides, like Team K and, you know, Team Desmond. I'm Team Kristy. I'm Team Desmond. And like, oh, this is horrible. Why would he do this to her? You know, why would, and then some other wild people, like other wild people just saying that Desmond, he got a lucky escape, I guess, or him just making it out as if like she was a lot because of her theatrics and the way she did pranks and the content, and people just making up their own stories based off like the very small information and very like 10-second clips and 5-second clips that we have of them. Like there's not a lot to, or maybe not 5 seconds, but like the 1 minute clips that you see here and there, like there's not enough, you know, information that you can say that this is the core reason. But what I do know is that people evolve and, you know, people change. And to me, it just feels like, you know, two people who, because I actually was stunned when I found out that they were both in their early 30s. I think he's 31 and she's 30. They are absolutely young as heck. And now in this stage of their life, God willing, about to find their individual people who fit, or who better fit who they are now, because who they are now is a closer representation of like their fullness, you know, who they've grown up into, you know. So that for me was one of the biggest things that stood out, that I just feel like, to, you know, repeat what I was saying before, it's just that thing of like, you grow it into such different people, and then it's like you're also not just growing into such different people, you're also doing it in front of the public eye. You're also like, before they became public, is that the word I'm looking for? Prior to them becoming public, they obviously were still, you know, doing their thing, but they become public, and I think they became public maybe like 5 years into their marriage. Can you imagine how much like the internet and, you know, growing and like the business growing and their lives changing would have affected their growth and who they become? I don't think that like, you never want any relationship to break down, especially where you see that there's so much joy there. Like, we can't deny and say there wasn't like moments where we all looked at their content. I know I did. Let me speak for myself. I know there was moments where I looked at their what they created and thought, oh, this is cute. Oh, this is funny. Or this is that. Like, you never want to see anybody go through the level of like grief and hurt and damage that can happen when someone's cheat, but also when you're now ultimately having to divorce and restart your life and like restructure things. It's a lot. It's very heavy. I've not experienced it, but I can imagine, and I've seen people like who you know, in close proximity who have to go through this transition. It is intense, so you don't wish that on anybody. But one thing I did want to talk about is, I feel like there are a lot of people who love the idea of struggling in order to maintain a family dynamic, like this perfect, crystal clean, amazing, you know, family dynamic of like same mom, same dad, the children, in the midst of like suffering. Like, I really want this to make sense, but because I think there are a lot of people who think that choosing to stay within a marriage, even though you are both as partners, both, or even just one of you is miserable and unhappy to be here, it's a better decision to stay in that for the sake of the children being okay, and for the sake of the children still having the mum dad family dynamic wrapped around them. That doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit the kids. It doesn't benefit the actual parents themselves as individuals in the long run. Like, in the short term, we might say that, oh yeah, the kids, they have mum there, they have dad around, like it's the perfect family structure and we can all pretend and play happy family. But what you end up doing is teaching these children, or teaching not just the children, even yourself, that it's okay to live in a lie. Especially because the thing is, I'm not saying that, you know, if things aren't working in your relationship, don't try. Once you've gone past the threshold, or you've gone past the period of like trying to make it work, fighting for the relationship, giving it your all, and it's still not working, and you guys still aren't meshing, and it's still not, you know, working, hello, like we shouldn't be trying to force something. We shouldn't be trying to like remain in something that isn't fulfilling us, that isn't growing us, that isn't expanding us, that isn't bringing us joy, and it's making us miserable. But we say that we're going to remain in it because we want to maintain this like happy-go-lucky family structure. No. Yes, it's not fun that you have to like create a new family dynamic and figure that out, and, you know, and bring in new people and all, like that part of things is absolutely heavy. But I think it's so much more heavier to remain in a lie that's like making you shrink and making you unhappy, making you miserable, making you just remain stagnant. You don't deserve that, and absolutely the kids don't deserve that. And I say this because there was a lot of conversation around that where people are like, oh my gosh, you know, you should just stay. Well, they didn't say it like that. I'm sure they didn't say it like that, but just people saying that you stay in the family dynamic, oh, for the kids, oh, but what's going to happen now? Oh, but just try, guys. Oh, but da 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 da. I'm sure these people like tried. I'm sure they tried to figure things out. And if it's not working, like, we've all got to move on and choose happiness and choose fulfillment and choose what makes sense for our lives and who we're becoming, you know, and not just try to force ourselves into something that isn't progressing us and ultimately not bringing us peace in this life, you know? And so that's kind of everything I wanted to say on their situation. I feel like, you know, in this matter, similar to all the matters that we've kind of gone through today, we are just watching people physically evolve right before our eyes, and everybody is just trying to figure it out, man. We are all on this planet, and this is all of our first times, unless you're watching this and this is your second time on this planet. I'm scared. But for the most part, it's all of our first times, you know, on this planet, in this world, figuring things out, you know. So just to extend a level of grace, like, no one here in, you know, Kristy and Desmond's story, no one here is a villain. It's not a villain versus saint situation. Obviously, what he did was wrong, absolutely. And I think there was like some other stuff that came out, you know, after that wasn't great to see also. But everybody is trying to figure it out. And, you know, again, we can only pray that people grow and evolve in a way that allows their life to flourish, for them to become exactly who they're destined to become. And I just wish that for every person we've spoken about today, with the Dami Indiyah situation, with the Desmond and Chrissy situation, with the Brooklyn and, you know, Nicola situation, that these people just have the room to evolve and, you know, grow into who they're, you know, destined to become. And that is everything that we want to talk about today. I just had a thought, actually. This wasn't part of the episode plan, but I did see, just because of what I was saying right now about people evolving and, you know, letting people become, I saw that Kanye put out a post the other day, or yesterday, literally last night, I believe it was last night. And I've not taken it in enough to like have any sort of perspective or anything like that. I haven't taken it in well enough and asked myself questions and asked questions enough. But grace. I just want us to have grace and know that this human experience is bloody hard. It is not a joke. It is a transition. It is a process. And we all just want love. We all just want grace. We all just want room to be able to evolve and, you know, do the best that we can, you know. I say that just more so on a loose one, to kind of round off this episode. Maybe we'll talk about it in another episode properly. But yeah, I feel like I've gone on for a while. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit of a different one, a very different one for us. But like I said, it's a big year for us this year. We are talking a lot. It's a lot of solos. Very excited about that and everything else. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And yeah, let us continue to talk. See you later.